I'll go back into the story of the evolution of Ollie Smith now. So you had your sort of like academy year, and like you said, you're like, you were more down at Ayr, but you were training with Glasgow.
Yeah.
Then you got the pro season that we've just had, and as you put nicely at the start, the consistent game time in the jersey. How did that start to feel? As obviously, as we touched on at the very start with Scotland, not many people know your name when you go to Chile and that.
No.
In Glasgow, your name's becoming a bit more familiar and people are starting to recognise you as a player. How does that sort of change when everything's going around in your brain?
It's quite strange. I think it obviously been like a non-start. I mean, I had my debut game was the same game as Rufus, and a week after Ross, and our three of us, our starts just went completely different. Like Rufus obviously was scoring worldies kind of every week, and he seemed to be everywhere. And then Ross, obviously, young player of the season, after only playing half the season, kind of. And I sort of fell out of favour, got injured. I mean, my performances, when I look back at it, I'm not embarrassed, but I'm disappointed in not taking those opportunities. And maybe it was a bit premature. I wasn't maybe ready. And then going into this season, I had a completely different mindset. Going into the pre-season games, I felt like I was in better physical nick. I was bigger. I was stronger. And it just didn't really kick on. I remember playing the first two pre-season games, thinking I'd played all right, and then being on the bench for the first game and being a bit disappointed, and then being dropped the week after. And like I say, like that takes a hit on your confidence. Ross and guys like Rufus, Darge as well, they're playing every game week in, week out, and you're just kind of at the sidelines. You're literally just training because there was no other games. So I kind of had a mental switch sort of maybe October, November time, thinking, right, I'm going to get myself in some serious shape and work really hard at what you say, control the controllables. All I was doing was gymming and training. So I was like, I'm going to work really hard in the gym. I'm going to focus on what I'm eating and be in the best shape I can be for whenever that call comes to play again. That'll be ready. And then that La Rochelle game came completely out of the blue. I wasn't even in the squad that travelled to Exeter the week before, like not even 24th man or anything. And then the week after, just the team got announced. I had no inclination of me being in the squad, and I was on the bench. And then, obviously, the game went the way it went. I didn't come on until the last sort of 7 minutes or whatever. And I remember Murchie was on the touchline at that point because he wasn't defence coach yet, and he was saying to me, like, just do what you've been doing in training, go make something happen. And then, obviously, got lucky with the two touches was 2 tries. And from there, it's just been like nothing I could have imagined. The week after, starting against Connaught, I remember thinking before the game, like, it's a win-win for me. If I not a win-win, but I remember thinking if I play badly, then I'll just be back to, like, it'll obviously be gutting, but that's what they'll expect. They'll think he's not ready still. If I play well, then they're going to think, oh, we can just play him whenever we want. So I was kind of carefree and just, like ready to kind of do what I've been doing in the build-up. We obviously had a great team win that day, put 40 points on Connaught in Galway. And then from then just rolled in and just started most games after that. My injury obviously came at a pretty difficult time when I just cracked into the Six Nations squad. And when I came back from that, I was a bit sort of like Josh was playing really well. Like he was one of our best players last season. And I remember coming back from that and thinking, oh, I'm going to have to like try and get back into the team again. It's going to be all over again. And then go to South Africa and starting both games and sort of being like, oh, right, maybe. Because I hadn't really had much conversation with the coaches and thinking maybe, all right, I'm now like, I'm in the starting role, and like it was a pretty cool feeling to know that I'd not played in 2 months, but they're still backing me to start against the Stormers, the team who obviously won the league, and then the Bulls.
And they're not easy games either. They are,
No,
especially when you're in South Africa.
Yeah, the Stormers game was probably the hardest game I've ever played. And yeah, it does put you at ease because you then relax a little bit more in your role and think you obviously don't. You've still got people breathing down your neck. Like we still had Rufus coming back. Cole was always like in your peripherals. Like he every time he plays, he's a solid player. Steno as well. Like guys like Ratu, Sebastian, Seb. Like it's a good back three we've got at Glasgow. So you can't slip up, but knowing that kind of sort of in the back of your mind, knowing that you're going to be playing week in, week out, puts you at ease and allows you to get into sort of rhythm. And I always feel I play my best rugby when I'm playing consistently. And thankfully, like I managed to sort of still play all right after I came back from my injury, which obviously led into getting into the touring squad, which was obviously really cool.
No, it was great to watch as well because, like you said, it seemed every time you got there, because obviously you had the first 2 games of the season get dropped, and then it's always because I've never got to experience the level of rugby you've played at, and I've come to terms with the fact I never will. But when you talk about you think about getting dropped, and when you see it from an outside perspective, you think, oh, this guy's got dropped. I don't know how it really affects, but the way you've made it sound like it really does weigh on a player when you do get dropped, because it's like I suppose there's very few jobs in the world where you get a physical public telling off that you are not performing to the standard you want to be performing at.
I think when you break it down as well, it's like you've obviously got so many people who are invested in the club and love coming to watch the club. And when you're not playing well, you hear it. Like obviously the way the season ended, it was like an absolute barrage. I remember staying off Twitter for a couple of days. And it's again like even in rugby, it comes to an ego thing. You obviously rugby is a game of testosterone and just absolute nut job sometimes. And when you get dropped, like it does knock your confidence a bit because you're thinking like, this is my job. I'm not good enough at my job to play in this team. Like, what am I doing? Like, I remember thinking, like, should I even do this really anymore? Should I look elsewhere? I love playing rugby. I'm not going to stop playing rugby, but should I look elsewhere if I'm not going to be playing here anymore? I don't want to become a player that's like just sort of training and to no avail, like not actually getting in the squad. So it's difficult when you get dropped, and I've experienced it a couple of times now with obviously that 20s World Cup and then making my debut and getting dropped again, and then being dropped at the start of the season as well. Like it was pretty tough, especially when the guys that I played 20s with are going sort of the other way and they're starting it week in, week out. And obviously it's good to see, but as a rugby player, you think to yourself like, why can't I do this? Why can't I be doing that as well? And I mean, it obviously turned good for me. I got very fortunate and lucky, but it is difficult, and it's people take it differently. It's a weird way to kind of weird thing to get your head around.
But it sounds like you really did get your head around it, and obviously we got to watch you do it because, as you said, South Africa tour, end of the season, Connacht game, La Rochelle game, you really did step up and become the consistent player in the jersey. So vice versa, as the feeling of the dropping comes, like you touched on it briefly, it feels weird becoming the first, like back to the American football reference, the first choice 15. But how did it? Because obviously the Glasgow 15 shirt has now got a bit of prestige about it thanks to Hoggy and things like that.
Yeah.
So, and obviously I've seen him. You said yourself you stay off Twitter if there was a particularly tough bit, like a tough game. Do you see it when people start to compare you to Hoggy and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen quite a bit of it. I remember my first few games, people discussing it and stuff, and I've been asked in interviews before, like, Hog's getting older now, like, are you going to be the next Stuart Hogg kind of thing? And I don't really like to do that. I don't tend to kind of model my game off of a particular player. Like, Hog's obviously been one of the best players like Scotland have ever had, 3 Lions tours or whatever. He's nearing 100 caps. He'll obviously get there. And he's a phenomenal athlete. Like I'm not going to be the same player. He's obviously so fast, so quick, and I'm never going to be like that quick. I have to find different areas of my game where I can improve, and that's kind of what I did at the start of the season. I sort of looked at my own game and thought, right, I need to work on this and this, and kind of become more of an all-round player. I spent ages working on my kicking game because my kicking used to be dreadful, like all over the place. And I feel like now I'm more consistent. I'm striking it better, and it becomes such a weapon in the game to just sort of relieve pressure. And you can always still work on these things. So, I mean, it's nice to have that. It's pretty cool to have that comparison to a guy like Stuart Hall. Like I said before, with guys like Wade Cooper, I watched them as kids. I was obviously, 10 or 11 when Hoggy made his debut for Glasgow, and then obviously went on that Lions tour at 18, 19. So I'm a massive fan of like his rugby. But I don't personally compare myself to his game because we're different players. And I also don't think too far ahead. I just like to think in the here and now and sort of work in small increments. I have my own personal goals that I tend to just keep to myself. But
I won't ask you to share them. Because that would have been my follow-up question if you hadn't gone with I'll keep them to myself.
Yeah. It just feels a bit. I don't want to be too premature and sort of voice.
What comes jinx it almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like whenever the opportunity comes, I'm gonna try and take it with both hands. Luckily this summer, obviously, with Hoggy not there, but I'm obviously all respect to Hoggy. Like he is the shoe and he's the captain of the Scotland team. Like I'm not expecting to sort of take his jersey, so to speak, anytime soon. But whenever like an opportunity comes to play again, like I'm obviously going to be ready for it. I'm going to try and do my best.
I love that as well, because I think what you summed up nicely there as well, because obviously a lot of rugby Twitter, specifically Scottish rugby Twitter, labelled you the next Stuart Hogg and things like that. But if you look at Chris Patterson, and everybody called Stuart Hogg the next Chris Patterson, and it's two completely different players, like you said, it's two completely different games. So you're just going to be the first Ollie Smith, and then some guy will go, "Are you the next Ollie Smith to the next kid?" And you'll be like, "Whatever you do, don't answer that stupid question."
Because even you look at like when I started at Glasgow, Rui Jackson was there, and he was a player that was had an unreal kicking game, and his knowledge of the game, backfield coverage and everything was like mental. And I took a lot from him when he was still there. He was a good mentor for me. So it's almost like taking stuff from more, like say, take Jacko's knowledge and kicking game and take Hoggy's speed and footwork and the way he moves with the ball. It's all like all these little increments from different people is like it's all stuff that can grow me as a player. But I'm just going to try and maybe do it a little bit differently, and obviously add my own little bit to it as well.
I love that. That's a great response to that question and that sort of situation as well. I like that because I love the authenticity, and I think it's been really apparent in the conversation tonight. Like your authenticity that comes through is brilliant, and obviously, like you said, since you had that mind switch, but you had that attitude adjustment of this is a game of rugby that I've been doing since I was young because it's fun.
Yeah.
And I took the fun out of it, stopped enjoying it. I've brought the fun back, and I've seen success.
Yeah.
So would you say that's like a fair assessment as well? You try to focus really more on the fact that it's still meant to be fun.
Yeah, I think so. I think I remember speaking to my parents and them saying like, whatever you decide to do, we're going to back you 100%. And I said, I'm not going to be stupid. I'm not going to walk away from rugby because it's something I absolutely love doing. I'm going to actually have to knuckle down and do it. And it's all, like you said earlier on, if it was easy, then everyone would do it. And it's not easy. But like that mind switch has definitely sort of made me into sort of even a better person outside of rugby. I've become well more level-headed and sort of tried to just stay grounded on and off the field, and it's paid dividends to me. And yeah, it's like an epiphany almost.
It's just that magic light switch moment.
One day.